I really, really appreciate you all having me back here. Was it last year? A couple, 21. See, there we go. A couple of years. You know how fast time flies. So when Dr. Ella asked me to speak, she said, speak on anything you want to speak on. It's been a rough year for all of us, right? And it has been a rough year for all of us. So there were a lot of topics that I could have pulled from. A group of women sitting together, and men here who are as well. We've all had tough roles to play. We have a million roles to play in a day, right? Like some mornings when I get up, by the time I've gone out the door, I thought if you made a list of everything you did before you left the door, wouldn't you just want to go back to bed right then, even before you left the house? Like, okay, fed the dog, fed the cats, cleaned up the cat vomit, put in a load of laundry, loaded the dishes, lost my keys, found my keys, packed my bags, got myself ready, got everybody. So it's good when we can take time to be together in any sort of way and support each other and spend some time, just taking some time for ourselves. The basics of what I do, I'm a cognitively trained, a cognitive behavior therapist. So no matter what issue somebody comes in with, no matter what's going on, the basis of what I teach people, I'm going to be teaching you today. Now, I could do a training on this topic and have taught counselors, so it could be a week-long training, 7 hours a day to teach this. So you're going to get an exposure to it. But I hope it's going to be enough exposure to make you hungry to go after what it holds for you, what it holds for all of us. Because it's what I use every day. Counselors aren't any more sane than any of the rest of us. I'm just telling you that. We just have my children. Let my teenager show you a picture of a fit I've thrown on them when I'm not in my adult ego state. But I do have the tools to get in my adult ego state, and I get there a lot quicker, and I stay there more often because of this. What I'm going to expose you to today. So let me just for a moment. We're going to start just for a minute. I just want you to right now say out loud, we're going to say it. You're going to say, I am special. Say that.
I am special.
Okay, you guys did pretty good with that. I mean, that was sort of convincing and impressing as a first attempt. Okay, so here's now what I want you to do. If you have paper and pencil in front of you, I want you to write your full name. So your name you were born with on paper, first name, middle name, and last name. The name that you were born with. You may have other names since then, but the one you were born with. And then below that, I want you to write down your date of birth. Okay, so I want you to look at that for a minute. I want you to silently in your head read the date of birth. And then I want you to think about something. I'm going to ask you, how many of you and you with that exact name, date of birth, and DNA have there ever been in all of history? In all of the history of the planet, how many have there been?
One.
And so for the rest of eternity, from now till infinity, how many of you and you and you will there be?
One.
Okay, so sit with that for a minute. Okay, so now I want us to say it again. I want us to say, all of us right now, I am special. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it that way, aren't we special? I mean, only one. We're rolled up and we're going, okay, here's your shot. You take the moon shot. Hopefully all of us are working on the moon shot. But here we are, the one and only one of us. You can go ahead and click it through for me. So when we talked about the power of self-talk and why things are important and why is it important for me to be sitting here with the one and only you to make sure you've got the best tools for taking that moonshot, is because the life's hard. Life is hard. There is no two ways about it. We get a lot of hard in our life, and then we get moments of beauty and joy. And what we have to learn is that something horrific and beauty and joy can bump right up against each other. And that's the lesson, because sometimes real hard makes us think we'll never have beauty and joy again, and they can coexist. So if we look at these statistics, this was in 2020, like this was at the beginning of the pandemic. Can you imagine what they are now? The stats now of the state of mental health in America. You know, the anxiety's up 634%. That was at year one of the pandemic. And depression, 873, 180,000 reported suicidal ideation. And if we look at that, that was only 9 months. And that was only the people who logged in to be screened on that particular computer site. So how many others are there? And so when we stand here as an individual and we think about all the people we touch and run into, and how in trouble all of us can be, and at times ourselves can be, it's really important to have tools and know things that can help us cope with this condition we call life. You know, the things that we come up against that are hard. So here's what's really amazing. So 33 years ago, when I became a therapist, I learned cognitive behavioral therapy. I didn't know then what I know now, so what we all wish, right? But what I know now, because of brain scans and technology and the ability to read what happens to your brain when you think a certain thought, or you let a single word run through your brain, what we know now that lights up on brain scans is amazing. Do you know that, and the statistics are 60 to 70,000 thoughts run through our brain a day. 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, of those 60 to 70,000, researchers say that only 5% are conscious. 95% of what drives us is running around there under the surface, and we don't even, doesn't that make sense though, when you look at some people and go, why would they do that? Right? It's because they don't know why they do that, you know, or even you ask yourself, why did I do that? You don't know. It's subconscious. I was listening to a comedian once, he said his son was like 14 and came through the house and his hair was cut, and like oddly cut, and he's like, what happened to your hair? And he's like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean you don't know? Did you have your head with you all day? You might want to know, unless you were passed out, what happened to your head. So with that being true, that much is subconscious, and that's often what therapy does, and that's what self-reflection, or if any of you are picking up the self-help books at Barnes & Noble, any of that is helping you become aware and more self-reflective, right? So what we know is that thoughts are real. Every thought you have has a biological and a physiological response. Think about it. You've heard that phrase, you know, they were mad as an old wet hen, or they were spitting mad, or I felt like hot lava. Like, have any of you ever had that feeling? Got mad at somebody and felt it bubbling up? Well, somebody didn't pour lava on you. You ran a thought through your head, and there was a physiological and a biological response. The other interesting thing about this is that they say 90% of our thoughts are repetitive. And ask anybody who hangs around with you or lives with you. I bet they could say things that you repeat, or things you complain about, or you could start a dialogue and they could go, no, wait. And they could write the rest of it and then hand it to you. Is that what you were going to say? Be like, yeah, you'd hate to admit that it's true, but it's true. Because we run that dialogue that we often don't put brakes on and change. And some of us have been doing it for 70 years. Some of us have got a dialogue we've continued for 70 years that we didn't put the brakes on. Okay, we can go to the next one. So I love this picture. I have this picture in my office, and it doesn't show up on here, but what it says at the bottom is hidden depths. And so this picture makes me think about that part of our thought processes, right? So there's only the 5% at the surface and the 95% underneath. This is also a picture, I think, of us. So we only see the top, right? We don't see all that stuff underneath. But you know what we do? We then look at each other and we compare ourselves to each other, when what we're really doing, you're never comparing apples to apples. You're always comparing apples to oranges. Because you know what you're doing? You're comparing your insides with their outsides, right? There's no equal. You only look at them and say, I mean, like you look at me, I look at you, we look like we got ourselves dressed and got ourselves here in fine condition. Who knows what any of us have been through this morning already, right? We just look like we're here in fine condition, right? So it's important to think about, because you know what? It gives us grace too. It gives us grace for another when they show up and maybe they're all snippy today, or maybe the cashier was rude to you and you start to feel some sort of way about it, but isn't that her job? Why is she being rude to me? And you go, well, it helps give us some grace that I'm only seeing the tip of the iceberg. And I'm not seeing what maybe perhaps had them behave that way toward me today, right? Okay? So how do we get, so that we know a lot about how much we think and how we think. How did we get to be who we are? Just going to touch on that lightly. Nature or nurture, what do you think? Both, right? It's both. It's absolutely both. And what's cool, I always throw this slide in here, which those are my two little ones, like 20 years ago. They're 21 and 22 now, but it just makes me happy to see them and eases my anxiety when speaking to see them. So it puts it up there. But it also says that these two children grew up in the same family, but they're as different as night and day. Like you wouldn't even think it. Like that one, she could break a rib and you'd never know it. That one, if there's a strong wind, she wails. It hurts. Like the other one, her first words were, tell me no. It has stuck. We've battled it now for about 14 to 21. Just the other day, I got a birthday card that said, thank you, Mom, for something. I went over, I was checking her for if she had alien scales under there, something. But and you know what? None of us grow up in the same family. Even though we all grow up in the same family, none of us grow up in the same family. Because it's like a river. You can step in a river, but you're never stepping in the same water. And the parents, like when we were parents with our first one, we're different parents than we were with the third one. None of us have the same parents. So it is, but they are biologically, because her first words being, tell me no. And then if I was telling her something to do, the second phrase was, uno toca me. Uno toca. She'd put her little hand up and say, uno toca me. Yeah, so, okay, we can go to the next one. And so this is it's called a family genealogram, and it helps us look back. You became who you were through these generational, your parents and their parents and their parents. And sometimes it's called the family transmission of shame or guilt, or the family transmission of anger. Question I'll often ask people is, what did you, like the other day, anger. What did you learn about anger from your family? How did you learn to do anger in your family? How did you learn to do guilt in my family? And then my friend who's Catholic, she's like, we're so good at that. We're so good at that. Nailed it on that one. But we all learn how to do those emotions, and we learn them through the model that I'm going to show you here today. So it's that question, how do you get to be the authentic you? How do you get to be who you are? And you see all these people up here. All of these people are relatively famous people in different ways, and some of them have told their stories and talked about their challenges, and we've all told our stories, or some of us haven't and need to tell our stories, but we have stories that are how we became who we were. So when we find that things are working and it's working well, great. When we find that things maybe aren't working or we're not feeling the way we want to feel, what do we do about that? Here's why the title of this talk, The Power of Belief, Why Self-Talk Matters. Here's where we're getting into the meat and potatoes of it. Because if it's not working, or we do identify something that we want to change or somehow we want to grow, that's what this model that we're moving into. Okay, Colleen. Okay, so how do people change? You know, I sat in a room full of, because not all therapists know cognitive behavior therapy. So sometimes I'll get called to train therapists on cognitive behavior therapy. And so I'm in a room with 100 therapists and ask this question: how do people change? Okay, so if you or somebody you know and love has brain surgery, it has to have brain surgery, and you ask the brain surgeon how they're going to do it or what they're going to do, and they say, I don't know, would you be slightly concerned?
Yeah.
You want them to have an answer, right? I want my therapist to have an answer of what they believe about how people change. I want them to have a model for how they believe people change. So what we know are, there are two things that are required. Needs to be an emotionally compelling reason to change, and there needs to be tools for change. Because sometimes people get the emotionally compelling reason, like a client I had who needed to stop working 90 hours a week and driving themselves into the grave and had a heart attack. The heart attack, even though the conversation for the previous year wasn't enough of, you know, you're losing your family, you're losing your business, you're losing, all fairly emotionally compelling reasons, but it was the heart attack that he survived that then got him to change. So once you've got the emotionally compelling reason, like, oh, I'm feeling terrible, or I'm depressed all the time, or I'm anxious all the time, or like, you know, my family is unhappy, my spouse is leaving, something, then you need the tools. So the tools all have to do with this lovely model that we're gonna talk about here. So let me ask you a question. Did you ever feel like you woke up in a bad mood? Or you just got in a bad mood? You ever feel like that? So I'm gonna use this table. And I actually don't even have the right bag today, because this bag is not true for me today. Because today, because I'm in front of you all and I'm wanting to do a good job for you and give you some tools to walk out of here with. Today I'm giving it my all, but this was the closest bag to me, which sometimes I carry, that says, today I'm gonna give it my some. Gonna just give it my some today. You know, there's some days where you just need to rest and you can't give it your all. You're not going to give it your all, you're gonna give it your some, but that's not true. So we're gonna turn that over, because we are giving it our all today. So I carry this brain around with me. Try to carry my brain all the time, but just in case I've done something with mine, I try to always have this one with me to at least say I have one. So a lot of us feel like that we've woken up in a bad mood. Okay, there is no such thing as a bad mood. What happens was, we created so next time you say, oh, I just woke up in a bad mood, change your language. I have created a bad mood for myself today. Just own it. I've created a bad mood for myself today. Sometimes we're not even aware of it, because why? 95% of our thoughts are unconscious. Or when we're just waking up from sleep, we're in that sleepy, wakey state, and we don't even know that we've thought, oh God, I got to bake cookies for the PTO today, and I don't have time to do that. We're not aware of it. So, next one. If you all were getting a test right now, we passed out the test paper, and the first question is, where do feelings come from? What would you write? Where do feelings come from? Heart. Anything else? Somebody said heart, then brain. Okay, anytime I do this, no matter the size of the audience, no matter what, there are 3 answers to that question. The number one answer people give is my feelings come from my heart. So that's the number one answer given by people, statistically most often, the heart. And we even have phrases that perpetuate that myth. What if somebody breaks up with you and you didn't want them to, what do you have? Broken heart or a heartache, right? So the second most common answer people give, people will say, my feelings come from my insides. And they'll often touch their belly, and they'll say, my feelings just come from my insides. And we have a phrase like, if you have to perform or speak and you're nervous, what do they say you have in your stomach? butterflies in our stomach. So we perpetuate these myths. The third most common answer people give is, my feelings come from things outside me. It makes me feel, she makes me feel, he makes me feel, right? That's we say, my thoughts and feelings come from things outside me, okay? That made me feel, I don't know if this will set up here. I'm going to knock things over, I'm fairly certain. Well, maybe. I don't know. Okay, you've seen it. You've seen it. It can set up there on that something. Okay, so it made me feel, and you see that this is a dark, cloudy sky because those sort of thoughts bring dark, cloudy skies upon us. So we give power away when we say, it made me, he made me, she made me. So those are the three top answers. None of them are correct. The correct answer is, my feelings come from my brain. They absolutely come. A thought first happens. We'll go ahead and click, thank you. And we've seen, it's important, you've seen The Shining, any of you. We've got to learn to control our mind, or we will be controlled by it. How many of you have had a time when your mind bullied you? And, you know, I have told my mind, you will not bully me today. I'm not going to allow you to bully me today. Our mind will bully us if we allow it to. Our mind will run rampant if we allow it to, okay? So what you're learning, this is what you're learning. You can Google, there's a free rational motor behavior therapy website. They have a lot of free handouts. There are lots of books. Albert Ellis is the founder of REBT, and there's a book, sort of a common layman's book, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes, Anything. It's a long title, but it's got the premises of this book, How to Refuse to Make Yourself, or any book by Albert Ellis will teach you the basics of this REBT. So, because it's never the situation. It's the thoughts about the situation, right? So we'll go ahead to the next one. Okay, so we're going to leave this up here for a minute. So if I asked you that first question, where do feelings come from? So here's the second question. How quickly can feelings change? Like a millisecond, nanosecond, I don't know what's short of that. Here's how quickly they can change, and here's just sort of evidence of how quickly that can happen. You're walking through the woods, you're going through, it's leaves, and you put your foot down and you step on a snake. Your foot lands on a snake. What happens to you? What's the thought? What's the feeling? Automatic. And your flutter, probably your heart immediately. So we got the physiological and the biological response. And you're, oh, and then you're like, oh, it's a stick. It's a stick. It wasn't a snake. It was a stick. What happened? Like that evening, are you still grouchy at everyone in your house that you stepped on a snake? You're not. You let that go a long time ago. Are you laying in bed afraid still later that day because you stepped on a snake and then no? It went that quickly. But some of us, think about how many thoughts you've held on to all day and you're still mad at somebody the next day, that night, 27 years later. You truly can't remember why. You just know you got a grudge and you're holding it. You're not sure why. But here's what I'm proposing to you, and here is absolutely what I've learned over the years. And I am so much better at it now, even than I was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. I'm better at it than I was 2 years ago because I know this, because I know what happens to the brain, and I know that it is entirely possible for me to let go of any negative sustained emotion just as quick as I went, snake! Oh, it's a stick. I can let go of any grudge, any pain, any anger, any feeling just as quickly with the right tools to do that with. And with the commitment to change it. Because we all know people who need to change but don't have any interest or awareness that they need to change, right? We got to have the awareness, we got to have the interest to do it. But I promise you it is possible. They do, so you know how it used to be we only had CT scans, like CAT scans. Then you could get an MRI, right? And an MRI was something new and special. Then you could get a PET scan, right? And there didn't used to be PET scans, there was just MRIs. Now we can get PET scans. Well, now there's something called a QEEG scan, which isn't something we get, but one day may be the same as a PET scan or an MRI scan. But with PET scans, we can watch how your brain lights up when you think or say a certain word. Language matters. I'm on my clients all day long about their language, and I catch them every time, and then they begin to catch themselves, and then they begin to change their language. And it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. It's just like I say to the athletes I work with. My athletes, I don't know, we're probably in the wrong neck of the woods for this, but my athletes were in the Super Bowl this year, the ones that I work with. And so what I say to them, you know, the language, the thoughts, they can instantly increase their performance on the field by changing the way they think and by changing a certain word that they use in their language or their self-talk when they're pumping themselves up out on the field. So it is powerful, powerful stuff. And I encourage you, like I said, I know we don't have a lot of time, I'm just exposing you to it, but it's the most important, powerful thing that I've ever learned. So we're going to go, well, let me talk about this for a second. So this is the model. It's an ABCD model. And what the A stands for is the activating event. So that's just anything that happens to us, whatever it is. Cat threw up this morning, or I got fired, or somebody spoke hateful to me, whatever it is. For every event that happens to you, there are two consequences. Our feelings, we can go ahead to the next one, are how we feel and how we behave. So anything that happens to us, we first have a feeling, and then we have a feeling and a behavior. Now, most people believe A causes C. That made me, it made me, he or she made me. Listen to people. Once you go out of here today, raise your awareness. Listen to how many people say those phrases or how many times you catch yourself saying it. So what we then have to look at is the next one. It's not A that causes C. It's never the A that causes C. There is a B in there. It's the beliefs in this model. It's our self-talk. So we think something about it. If A caused C, okay? So like if here's A causes C. Is it okay if I touch your arm? Yes. Okay, so I come over to you. If I grab you and I pinch you just as hard as I can pinch you, I could make her arm hurt, right? I mean, I'm not going to, I don't want to, but if I was going to pinch her, that would be a cause and effect. She pinched me, my arm hurt. People believe that's the same thing. You said that to me, I hurt about that. Or I got mad about that, whatever the feeling is. Now, if A caused C, let's say 100 people go through a divorce. If A causes C, the way a pinch causes pain, then all 100 people would feel the exact same getting divorced, right? Because if I pinched every one of you, unless you have a neurological some issue, it would hurt. But if 100 of us get divorced, do all 100 people feel the same? No, some are devastated, some are having the biggest divorce party on the block, some are somewhere in the middle, and it's because A doesn't cause C. If we go to the next one, the event happens, we have a thought or a sentence, self-talk about it, and then we have the feelings and consequences. So what the D stands for in this model, it stands for the disputing of because what I'm going to show, and I tell everybody this, if you and I spent 15, 20 minutes together, I'm fairly certain, I mean, I'd lay a pretty good bet that I could find an irrational sentence you have that you don't know you're walking around with. Just because they're sometimes so deep in there and they're so ingrained and they're about things that you don't think about, or it doesn't really, you're not down drinking yourself to death at the Legion. It's not like a real big serious thing. But they're in there. We carry them. And that's what the beliefs, when they get us into trouble, when we have negative, sustained reactions, when we hold on to stuff and junk, it's because we have irrational thoughts in our head. So the disputing, we can go ahead to the next one. The disputing is to change the sentences from irrational to rational. So this up here, true and not true. I don't even, this is a friend of mine made this slide, and not true and true, we use it in a different training to then specify. Even the words true are sometimes sketchy because some of us have what we call accepted truths. Like, did you ever see that where it went across the internet, like Easter, you know, and there were 3 generations, mom, grandma, mom, granddaughter, and grandma, and they were cooking and they were making Easter ham, and so the daughter cut the front off this end of the ham and this end of the ham, put it in the pot. And somebody said, why'd you do that? One of her friends. And she goes, that's the way my mom made it. And they got curious and they went to mom and said, Mom, why'd you do that? Cut the ends off. And mom said, I don't know, that's how my mom did it. And they were like, oh, well, maybe, does it release the steam and the heat and it cooks it better? Does it release the juices and they flow better? Everybody was speculating, had a lot of thoughts. They asked grandma, and grandma said, because it didn't fit in the pan. But we had a lot of accepted truths or speculation about why something was the way it was. And we have a lot of accepted truths and speculation about our lives and about ourselves, about who we are. So the disputing, here's the 3 questions. If you walk out of here and you just begin pursuing with these 3 questions, first thing you want to ask yourself, what am I feeling? So you first want to identify your feeling. Because you know what? You know what some of us label a lot of feelings? Anger. But really we're hurt. Men tend to do this a lot. Anger is a protective emotion. And they say they're really mad and angry, but when you get under it, they're hurt. They're more hurt or scared. Anger covers up hurt and afraid a lot. So what am I feeling? The second question, what is my self-talk? What am I telling myself? What are the sentences that are going through my head? And then here's the bread and butter with it. Is that a scientific fact? Is what I have just told myself a provable scientific fact? And what I propose to you, what I propose that you challenge yourself with is, if what I'm telling myself is not a provable scientific fact, then why am I telling myself that? Why am I telling myself? I had a client the other day, young woman, 18, and she told me, when I asked her how she felt about herself, relatively, had been through a lot, and she said, I am a piece of SHIT, said that about herself. And you know what a horrible way to feel. And we had enough rapport that I was able to say, if you're gonna make that sentence, if you're going to at least walk around with that, I can't let you walk out of here without backing it up with some evidence. Okay, where is some evidence? I need to see some evidence that you're that. And everything she threw up, we could easily dispute. So it's the disputing is when you go look for, so if you have a negative sustained emotion, it's absolutely because there's a negative irrational thought. And so if you go start taking that apart the way they took apart the why do you cut the ends off the ham, then you get to those irrational sentences that you can work on changing. This one is somebody, they got a B on a test and they started telling themselves they're a failure and I'm never going to amount to anything. And somebody can get fired from a job and say they're worthless, or somebody can go through a divorce, or their partner has infidelity and they say all these terrible things about themselves and come to believe that, rather than the disputing is when you challenge it. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So this model is what you want to know. Thoughts goes in here, and then it creates feelings and behavior. But there's always a thought for you to go back and dispute and challenge. Okay, so I talked to you about words, and the power they have. This is one of the ones that's been the most studied. So pretend you are this group, half of you, this half of the room and this half of the room went to do this study. And they didn't know why. They thought they were just part of a focus group. They didn't know what it was really about. So this side read a document and this side read the exact same document. except everywhere here the word should was, over here they eliminated or changed the word should. All they did was read a document with should all the way through it. Do you know at the end, when they measured all of the measures that they had studied before, heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, and even blood clotting factor. Now these people thought they were going to say, because the word should is critical and negative. If I came over and I said, well, I already pinched you, so Ella, I'm gonna be critical to you. And I said, you should have done this, and you should have done that, and you should have, why didn't you do this? And versus I came over and I said, Ella, you know, on this one, it would have been nice if you would have done this, or I would have liked it here if you would have done this, rather than, even if I said it nice, you know, you should have done this, Ella. I'm trying to be nice. I mean, it's not that it's that hard for me to be nice, but let me try to say it nicer. You should have done this, Ella, versus it would have been nice if. Which feels better? I mean, the should, like Albert Ellis, we have our next one here. This is our should card. We have our should card, which also, maybe I'll see if we can stack it. Did you stack it against the cup? Somewhere. That's our should card again. Cloudy skies, that when we should, we'll go to the next one. Albert Ellis' advice is don't should all over yourself. And don't should all over other people either. Other people don't like it when you should on them. Right? But it helps me remember it. It is a catchy way that he's come up with to help people remember. Because another thing I read somewhere, and it's a beautiful piece of advice. Don't criticize anybody. Now this is a little, I would say it further, but he said, Robin Sharma said, don't try to improve anybody in the first 3 minutes. Think about how many times in your family or, you know, like, boy, I've had to bite my tongue when I see my daughter come down and want to wear some skimpy something. Do you know the top of choice at University of Pittsburgh in the city? The top of choice these days is no top. No tops, just bras. I went down and picked my daughter up Tuesday, no shirts. They are just, the entire campus, they're just in their sports bra. Now a sports bra, a bralette, and someone walked across the street in front of me of what I could identify as just your basic bra. So, bra of choice. And so, you know, thank goodness, because I'm not sure I'd be able to maintain my should. I worked hard at maintaining my should. I might should on my daughter if she came out in a bra. We'd have to go to therapy or something. But I do work at, that goes through my mind, don't try to improve her in the first 3 minutes. There'll be time for that. I can work on it another way. But that language is really, really important and powerful. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Here's another one. Here's another one that we can put somewhere. Okay, can't, that picture is, thank you. Can't is cement, right? Can't is cement. What you say you can't do, it is much more difficult to do. Remember that, and every time it comes out of your mouth, my clients will catch themselves, I can't do this. So, and I'll show you in a minute how we work on changing things, but I haven't learned to do it. Anybody think of the key word that? Yes. Yeah. Yet. I haven't learned to do it yet, or I'm not there yet, whatever it might be. That language is programming. You program yourself daily. Anybody have one of those Roombas and you program it to do your room? You don't let it just run willy-nilly all over places it doesn't need to run. You program it. But we have to think about what is the language that we're programming our brains with and programming ourselves with. Okay? Okay, so the essence of most of our disturbances is blame. Blame is the essence. Now, that's Albert Ellis's phrase, is blame is the essence of most disturbance. Because if I'm blaming you, it means I'm not looking at my part in it. And who's the only person I can change? Who's the only person you can change? It's the only person you can change. You can't do anything about. You can express, you can have an ask. I always tell couples when I have marriage, in marriage counseling, marriage sort of gives you an ask. It's part of the contract. You get an ask. The person can say, no, I'm not going to do that for you, or here's why. But we certainly get an ask of the people that we surround ourselves with to behave a certain way. But if they don't change, I'm only responsible for me. And then I got to ask myself, if there's some real negative, toxic thing that I keep showing back up for, then it's on me to ask myself why I continue. I get real curious and compassionate. Those are two good words. You want to check in with yourself. You want to be curiously compassionate with yourself. You want to be compassionate and curious with yourself to look at why you behave in the ways you do. If there are some that are not serving you well, you don't get all shooty on yourself and beat yourself up. You get curious and you get compassionate with looking at that. So the other one is offended. That's a big one. We are all so offended. We're all so offended. The world's offended. Everyone's offended. And that has us, because you know what an offense means? An offense means that I have a should for you, that you should not offend me, right? However, I gave you the should, right? So if I turn that around, I wish, it would be nice if, I would like it if, I can have all those things, and I can do what I can do to make the changes in my life that I don't have this. But for me to tell somebody, we'll leave them on the grave for right now, for me to tell somebody else how to be is setting myself up for disappointment. I don't have my expectations in line with reality. I had a woman the other day say to me, fairly newlywed, she came in and said, my husband told me to, and he's not, it's the first display of this behavior. He told me to shut the bad word up and called me the B word. And her very next sentence was, but that's not who he is. He doesn't do that. That was the first time. And I said, well, let's back up a minute. I said, I know you're telling yourself that's not who he is. What you may mean to say is it's the first time he's done it, but he has just shown you that that's who he is. Like it came out of his mouth. So unless he had been, his amygdala damaged on his way to your house in a car accident with a spear through it, that's who he is. And so our language is real important because it helps us convince us of things and be able to stay in certain situations, right? So the next one, so a friend of mine that I work with at the Eagles, Kevin Elko, he does a lot of speeches, and one of his phrases is offended. He always says, so what, now what? We got to get to the now what. What's the now what? Okay, so what? I've been offended. Haven't all of us been offended a million times? Haven't we? I offended my children every time I didn't let them have a ho-ho and a Coke for breakfast. They're offended. It's okay. They were offended. They were deeply disappointed in me and offended by that fact. It's all right. They got over it, and so did I. But it's the thing that we have to look at. When we are offended, it hurts us, right? It doesn't hurt the people that have offended. They're marching on offending everyone else down the street, and we're the ones that are hurting from it. So here's the other, the big word to think about is ownership. Okay, ownership. The second you take 100% ownership of everything in your life, every single way you feel, I am entirely responsible for me. Every way I feel, I'm entirely responsible for. The second you say that every day and you work toward it and you take it, this is, at the Eagles, we want coachable players, right? Like when they were doing the draft, you want to get players that are coachable. So one of the things, blame, if I got a player and it's his job to carry the ball, he's a receiver, it's his job to carry the ball to get a touchdown. We worry when he's running with the ball and one of his players doesn't block for him. If he jumps up and starts pointing the finger, blaming, going, he didn't block for me, I couldn't make my play. We get worried. because the players I want us to be, the 1%er, the Sunday players I want us to be, we don't jump up and blame. We jump up and look for another way around. You didn't block? Okay, I'm going to find another way around. So we talk about that ownership language of taking full responsibility. My person didn't block for me, rather than blame them, I'm going to get up and find another way around this situation. But a lot of us will spend our lives in blame. A lot of us will, and then that makes us bitter. You know, we get bitter when we blame people and when we're offended. Okay, because every single day it's choices and consequences. Think about by 10 till almost noon here, how many choices have you already made today? You know, and how many healthy choices or unhealthy choices? We choose our thoughts when we become aware. When we're unaware, that 95% rolls around unconscious. But to think of choosing, today I'm gonna, if I asked you, you know, all of us chose an outfit, are you choosing your thoughts through the day? Are you choosing how to think? Do you have a model for how you think? It's important that you do. You know, here's another self-care. Okay, how many of us, you know, how many of us think that we should be eating right, we should be exercising, we should get enough sleep, we shouldn't use alcohol or drugs, we should make healthy choices all the time, we should think healthy thoughts all the time? Should, right? We should. How many of us have that should for ourselves? Okay, but how many of us do it? So the should doesn't do any good anyway. We're shoulding all over ourselves and it doesn't do any good anyway, right? But it helps us make think about, because the same way that we choose these behaviors, it's our thoughts that help us choose whether, okay, am I going to choose this healthy thing? Am I going to choose to go to the gym? Am I going to choose to, okay, I'm really angry at so-and-so, and this is hurting me. I can feel the lava in my heart. I can feel my heart racing. So I'm going to go sit, I'm going to write down some of my thoughts, and I'm going to plug these into this REBT model. I'm going to challenge these. Okay, because like think about going to the gym or doing anything healthy, or when the healthy things that you say you don't have time for, which is a more true statement? When people say I don't have time, is it that you don't have time? So again, just look at the play on language. I don't have time convinces me I don't have time, so I'm going to not fit that into I've just convinced myself with my language that I don't have time to go to the gym. If I change my sentence to I'm not making the time, it opens the door to get myself to the gym, to find the time or whatever it is that I want to be doing. But that language is powerful. You know who knows the most about human behavior? What profession do you think knows the most about human behavior? You might guess psychologists, police officers, psychologists, therapists. You know who it is? Advertisers, marketers, advertisers. Abby, the one who is all sassy, Abby, I have all these little notes when she was little tiny of 800 numbers of infomercials. She wailed for a month for watering globes when she was 4. Because for some reason the advertisers really got her on that one. She wanted those globes you water your plants with. I mean, she's 4 and that's what she gets for Christmas, is the watering globes. But advertisers know the most about human behavior because they know how to program us. You know, police officers and detectives and people know how to read us, know how to read our language and listen for it and shape us. That manipulation, people do it all the time. So, you know, this is just part of that, because if we don't take the time to be healthy in our thoughts, in our words, then the next one, then we're going to take the time to be sick, right? Like if you don't take the time to be healthy, whether it's physiologically or in our thoughts, then we get sick with anxiety, we get sick with depression. It is the power of our mind to be unconquerable. It really is to tell ourselves. I mean, I told myself, and I tell myself this with every new challenge, you know, you've got to make a decision of what you believe about yourself. Do you believe you're unbreakable? Do you believe you're unbreakable? No matter what happens, until I'm underground, I have decided I will get back up. And I mean, I've had a lot of challenges. Right now, my son's walking around. He's got an inoperable brain tumor on his brainstem. My other daughter has a life-threatening illness that it could be very progressive. And those things, I mean, this this is what has me to be able to continue to function. But I made a decision about myself, and why not any of us? You know, why not any of all those famous people up there? That could have been any of us. Why not us? Why not you? Why not you on whatever dream you have to still go after? But also, why not you on deciding and starting to program yourself that you're unbreakable? That nothing, I refuse to be broken. No matter how many times I get knocked back down, I'll get back up again. No matter how many times, depression hit me hard when that happened with my son, and it took 3 months to get my feet back under me. But it's part of a decision, it's part of programming, it's part of self-talk, it's part of the choices and consequences of what you think. So those handouts, we can start passing out 2 of the handouts, and I know we're coming up on our time, but I want to give you, these are, and it's all this language. When we talk about all the negative programming, how many of us say negative things? I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I'm ugly, I'm stupid. We have all sorts of I'll put this one maybe up here since you don't have any space. I'll just put it here behind me. And we've got some handouts going around.
Excuse me.
Sure. And if you look at this, the reason I have these on the hand, because I've talked to you all day about the power of self-talk and about language. And it's easy to remember this. Like, there are times where I want to write it on my hand in a permanent marker. And I have clients, take this and put it up in front of them. These are all negative words, and 2 of them are fighting words for sure. But when you use these words, just picture them as it's just a fist pummeling yourself with these words. We've already talked about can't, should, the 2 that we have up here. Can't and should. The other word to eliminate is try. Try. You know how many times people say, I'll try? I'll try. I'm trying. People will even come in and say, so a woman came in the other day and she had written in her journal every day. It was part of her homework to write in her journal every day. She came in and sat down, and when she was telling me about her week, she goes, I'm trying to write in my journal every day. And I said, well, did you write in your journal every day? And she said, yeah. And I said, then you're not trying to write in your journal every day. Can you change that sentence to a more active power ownership statement? I wrote in my journal every day. Trying is a passive word. Try is a victim word. I'm going to, I will, I am what, when you, so today is day 1 on you all walking out of here and catching try, should, and can't, not allowing them to come out of your mouth and changing them. So can't could be yet. Should, we have should, if you want to flip that one for me there. We have the things that we can work on changing that too. Try is just easily eliminated. You're going to be surprised at how many times you can these are words we don't need. They don't add value. They're not like a descriptor in the sentence. You can just eliminate them. Some of them you can change. And then the other 2 that I throw on there is because never and always are fighting words. There, you want to fight with somebody, say never or always. You never do that for me. And they'll be like, one time, remember in 2019, I did that. Or you always do that. I do not always. There was that one. Never and always are just fighting words. So I often feel like, so pay attention to your language. Okay, the next one. And then this last handout that I gave you, it's just got a good summary of things in terms of self-care and self-talk. I just always like to throw that one in there too. But the big part of what we've looked at today over here are those sentences, the self-talk. You've written the 3 of those down. What am I feeling? What am I telling myself? And is it true? Those sentences, above that you'll see that finger says step into the adult ego state. I've referenced that a bit. Today, just due to the nature of time, I didn't have time to expose you to, that's called transactional analysis. It's another therapy that goes real well with REBT, because when we're thinking rational thoughts, That means we're in our adult ego state. You've heard me reference when I can throw a fit, like if I've thrown a fit, I've slid out of my adult and I'm in my not okay child and can have a big hissy fit in that not okay child because I'm thinking irrational thoughts. So that's what that one's about. We always want to make sure we're getting enough, sleep, that we're getting enough good food, that we're exercising, that we're making sure we're drinking water, that we're doing self-care, we're doing things like meditation and breath work, and we're listening to music, and we're finding ways to play, and we're doing hobbies that we like, and all the things that help us take care of ourselves in this hard, tough world. So next one, and you've got those. Another good phrase just to remember, it's a good phrase about a big important phrase that I had to learn in spades when my kids got sick. Be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. Because if I'm right where my feet are right now, I'm not thinking about the past and I'm not worried about the future. I'm right where my feet are. And the phrase that helped me when right now, I could get a call about my son this second. But here's the phrase I adopted. Right now, at this minute, as far as I know, in this second as it's coming out of my mouth, we're all okay. Nobody's called me yet. Nobody's coming to the door to get me. At this second, I'm okay. I'm here speaking to you all. He's okay. He's out in the fishing stream fishing. And I'm going to do present moment living. Present moment living. And my self-talk is what drives present moment living. And trust me, I came wired with an anxious brain. I've got an anxious brain that I work to corral. The other day, my daughter one goes to UPJ and one goes to Pittsburgh. And it's funny, now, I used to, when I learned all this stuff and then got critical with myself to beat myself up for not doing it the way I learned in a book to do it. And then I'm trying to figure out why my brain's doing this monkey mind. Until I learned to be compassionate and kind, and I learned to do the model. And I know what I was going to tell you about with my players down there. You don't get this in a day or a week. You have to practice it, right? Like if they came in and said, I want a bigger muscle, and they went in the weight room and they went, here's a big 50-pound weight, and they, Sherry, I'm not doing that anymore. It didn't work. You got to go in for months. You got to lift it. That's what you got to do with these thoughts. You have to lift them and think them over and over. It's like AA's slogan, it works if you work it. It works if you work it. But so my daughter, I was in at UPJ with her, and my mom was going to pick up my other daughter in Pittsburgh, but I decided I was closer. And so I called my mom, and I said, Mom, I'll just get her because I'm closer rather than you go there. And I hung up the phone, and I went, and it doesn't pop up very often, but my anxious brain that has a fear of something horrific happening and a fear of death, I can identify where it came from, but it went, oh my, what if your mom was supposed to be the one to go get her, and now there might be a car wreck because you've disrupted the course of the universe. And I was like, where did that come from? Interesting. And so I almost went to pick up the phone. I'm like, okay, maybe I better call her and put it back like I was. But then what did my anxious brain do? My anxious brain then went, well, what if you disrupt it now? And that was the way you were supposed to disrupt it. And then you disrupted it that way, and then everyone's killed in a fiery crash everywhere. Oh, my goodness. So I sat for a moment, and I talked to, and it was a really comforting thought to say, Sherry, do you recognize that in all the years that you've been doing this, and that all of that monkey mind, what percentage of any of that monkey mind has actually ever come true? For any of us, right? What percentage of that monkey mind? So I just thanked it, because any of that part, it's not trying for my destruction. None of your eccentricities are trying for your destruction. They really think they're trying to help you. So I thanked it for trying to help me, and I said, but I've got this. And so I went on, and I just went on with it as it was, and we're all alive today. So be where your feet are, a long way of saying that. And then we're going to finish on just 2 more slides, and we'll finish up. I like this phrase a lot. I use it. Have you ever heard this, burn the ships? What it's from, one of the explorers, I can't remember which one of the early conquerors that went around and conquered all the nations, places, whatever. On the last place that he conquered, they all rowed up in their ships to go conquer it. They landed. He went to his warriors and said, burn the ships. And they're like, What are you talking about? And he's like, burn the ships. He made them set their ships on fire to take this last land. Why? Are you going to fight harder if you don't have anywhere to retreat to? I mean, he wanted that country, and he knew it was going to be hard. And he said burn the ships, because he knew if you go all in and you have something hard to fight for, you're going to fight a lot harder. I have this, I printed it on a t-shirt. Sometimes I wear it to the gym because it makes me burn the ships, go get them. But it makes us think about what, and we're all fighting for our lives. We're fighting for our mental health every day in this world and how hard it is, and we're fighting for our physiological lives then. Okay, the next one. This is another phrase. I want you to write this one down, and then we're gonna end with, I'm gonna show you a little. It's called neuro-linguistic programming, and there's a whole big world of that, but it is also all about language, and it's all about words and the power of it. And I just want you to practice it. In addition to all this language stuff I want you to practice, I want you to practice this. And it just might seem a little like, okay, frou-frou, but it's okay. We're just gonna practice it, and then you can test it. So what I'm going to have you do, so this phrase, I will live in vision and not circumstance. Okay, circumstance is what we're in, right? And living in vision means I'm going to, not even necessarily that I'm thinking that far forward. I'm just going to live in present moment vision, that I'm not going to let my circumstances be what anchors me and traps me. So in neuro-linguistic programming, there is a position I'm going to have you stand up. So we're just going to stand up. Everybody's going to stand up. And what I want you to notice, if you get the opportunity to try this week, and if you're not able to stand up right now, that's fine too. You can do it sitting down. But I'm just giving you a little stretch of your legs. You've been sitting for a while. So if you find yourself feeling any sort of negativity, heaviness, any sort of downness, if you get real mad, if you just have any feeling you don't like, when that happens, if you will stand up and I know there's not really room to do this, but just try to make some space. So you're going to open your arms out wide. You want to open them wide so that you're opening up your chest. And then you are going to make your gaze be up and to the left. So you're just going to look up and to the left. Okay. Now, so anchor that position, because right now in this room, it may not make a big difference, but the next time, okay, go ahead. Thank you, guys. Give yourselves a little hand. Okay, go ahead and sit down. The next time that you have any heaviness on you, or you get mad, or you feel down, you will notice when you get up and you lift and you look up, you will notice there is a shift. It is more difficult to feel all of that stuff that you're feeling if you are in this position, and it causes a biochemical, neurological shift. When somebody talked about police officers or investigators, when people interview people to ask them about crimes, they are watching where their gaze goes, because if I said, were you in that room, and you look up and to one direction, then you are creating whether you were in that room versus remembering whether you were in that room. So there's a lot of stuff to it. So I just want you to live in vision and not circumstance. And I know we're a few minutes over, so I want to thank you for having me again. It meant a lot to me, and thank you.